I don't want no oil, a spoil in my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things a-creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes!
And hello to those of you listening on the internet, wherever and whenever you are. My name is Joe DeMare, and you have tuned into For a Green Future. For a Green Future is a show where we talk about ecology and the environment. We talk about them in the way that they affect you, your friends, your families, your pets, your neighbors, and talk about how it affects your wealth, your health, and your happiness. And we have a jam-packed show for you today. It's quite a lineup. We have a guest who's going to be calling in at 8:15. His name's John Witte, and he is a professional solar installer. And I just think this is a really important interview because we hear about all the jobs and all the economic benefit of installing solar, and but it's nice to actually talk to one of those people that's doing the work, that's actually physically helping us transition to a carbon-free, a green future. So he's calling in at 8:15. And then we're going to have Rebecca's going to call in after the advertising when we hear from our wonderful, wonderful sponsors at the bottom of the hour. Right now, for the first 15 minutes or so, there's a couple things we need to talk about. First of all, I just want to say that, normally we do this show from the studio. So normally we have all those resources available that are at the studio. For example, the pool, they have that nice pool in the basement. Sometimes I'll go in early and do a few laps and take the shower, before I get on the air. Kind of loosens up the vocal cord. But here now, because of COVID, for the past months, we've been doing the show from my living room, and it's hard to just get that feeling that you're doing something really special. So I like to dress up. I'm in my suit. And if you've been listening for the past couple of weeks, I've been doing a little something extra each week. I was, for a long time there, I was going through my cool ties. I have a number of really nifty ties, but COVID went on so long that I ran out of my cool ties, so I asked listeners to send in ties. And you can still do that, of course, at P.O. Box 969, Bowling Green, Ohio, 43402. Just mark it to Joe, and you can send me a tie, and as long as it's not anything obscene, I'll wear it. And so I got a tie from a listener. It's a very nice tie. It's blue. It's got sunburst patterns on it, which is very appropriate for solar energy. And if you watch the YouTube version, you can actually see the tie in all its glory. But very grateful. Thank you to the listener who actually sent me a tie. And anyone else who's got a tie they want me to wear on the air, this could be an opportunity. If you've got like a spouse or a significant other who's got that one tie that they're always wearing that you can't stand, don't put your relationship in jeopardy, but this could be an opportunity to send me that tie, and I'll wear it on the air, and you'll have an excuse. So it's just send it to Joe at P.O. Box 969, Bowling Green, Ohio, 43402. Another little bit of personal news. I reported a few weeks back that my wonderful Chrysler Pacifica hybrid which is my plug-in hybrid. Right now it's currently sitting at 62 miles per gallon. I've had it all the way up to 92 miles per gallon. Regular listeners to the show know that I love this van. It's just, I love everything about it. Sometimes it's a little unhealthy maybe, but one thing that happened is that they have a recall on it. There's a problem with the battery posts and on the 12-volt battery, and a few of them, 5 out of 27,000 plus, actually caught fire. And so they did a recall on it, and I got the recall notice finally, and I was hesitant to bring it in because if they find the corrosion, they just take the van. They don't give it back to you until they manage to repair it. I took mine in, it passed. So hooray, no problem there. And it turns out they now have a fix for the problem. They figured out what to do about it. So they're selling Chrysler Pacifica hybrids, plug-in hybrids again, which, as you know, I think is the ultimate car. So if you've been thinking about buying one, you can go get it. The problem was that the 12-volt battery post would get corroded, and that would cause resistance, and the wire leading to it would actually catch fire. That only happened 5 times out of 27,000, and it only happened, turns out, in northern, very northern places like Canada. Most of them were in Canada. Then I think there was one in North Dakota. And it appears that what the problem was that people would track very salty snow into their van on their boots and on their shoes. That salty snow would melt, and the salt water pouring over the top of the post corroded it, and that's what caused the whole problem. So now they have a fix. It's simply a cover that goes over the post, and so once again, that will prevent the corrosion. And so Chrysler Pacifica plug-in hybrids are again available. And full disclosure, I don't get any kind of break, or Chrysler's not, one of my advertisers. I'm not getting any financial benefit from talking about this plug-in hybrid and other plug-in hybrids and other electric cars. I just think they're great, and we should be moving in that direction. So that's some good news if you've been following that story. And now we're going to come back to this next story after we talk with John, because this is probably one of the most important things that has happened to the Ohio Legislature, perhaps ever. And that is House Bill 6. If you're a regular listener, you know we've been following House Bill 6 since its inception. It's what's the opposite of immaculate? It's compromise. It's horribly dirty inception. Well, it turns out that you've probably heard that Larry Householder, the fellow who pushed House Bill 6 through this past week, was actually arrested on corruption charges. Yes, those of us fighting House Bill 6, it felt dirty, it smelled dirty, it looked corrupt, and it absolutely was corrupt. There was David DeVillers, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Ohio, brought charges against Larry Householder. They arrested him. They raided his farm. And it really, really looks like this is a $61 million case of corruption. It's a huge stain on Ohio. What House Bill 6 did was let's see. Okay, let me back up another step. I want to go to our local legislators, Haraz Gambari, the House District down here in Bowling Green, and Teresa Gavarone, our state senator, fought for this bill tooth and nail. They were just all out pro-Duke, pro-radiation. Let's irradiate as many people as possible. And what they're saying is, or what Teresa Gavarone is saying, Haraz Gambari, I have not been able to get anything out of him. I called both their offices, couldn't get a comment. Called the governor's office, couldn't get a comment. But what Teresa Gavarone has said publicly is, but it's a good policy. It's the worst possible energy policy. It eliminated a energy efficiency program which cost the taxpayers of Ohio nothing, and yet saved Ohio businesses billions of dollars in energy costs. It eliminated all funding for wind and solar. It adds a charge to all our electric bills, which will go on our bills after the fall election. They did that on purpose. That money was to be used to prop up 2 coal plants, one in Ohio, one in Indiana, and 2 nuclear plants, the Davis, Bessie, and Perry plants up on Lake Erie there. And that was the stated purpose of the bill. But as we know, because we covered this story just last month, the company, Energy Harbor, that's scheduled to get this $1 billion in our rate paying, they actually pulled $800 million out. They cashed it out. They just took it out in cash and pocketed it and walked away with it. So they've already stolen the money from Ohio. So it was supposed to be about promoting clean energy. That's what they started out with. It ended up promoting dirty energy, and it ended up being a very dirty bill. And so we're going to talk about this more after the bottom of the hour. Feel free to call in, please, and give me your opinions on this. What do you think about this idea that Ohio has not only passed one of the worst energy bills in history, but it also turned out to be one of the most corrupt energy bills, or one of the most corrupt bills of any sort in Ohio history, at 866-240-1065. And you can call in anytime at 866-240-1065. This is a call-in show. We love to hear from you, love to hear your comments. Basically, I love talking to people about the environment. That's one of the reasons I started this show, was because it needs to be talked about. I love talking about it, and here for 1 hour each week we get to talk about the environment. We get to talk about sort of painting the picture of a sane future, a future with green energy, a future where we're all healthier because the environment is cleaner, wealthier because we're not spending so much on fossil fuels, and wiser because you learn stuff when you try to do something, when you try to create something new. You learn all kinds of stuff, and I'm hoping that today we're going to be learning stuff from our guest, John Witte. Are you on the line?
Hello, Joe.
Hey, good talking to you. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. Nice to talk to you. Thanks for inviting me on your show.
Well, you're welcome, John. And I need to start out with a disclaimer here. You own a company, Integrated Solar, and in fact, your company, you're putting solar panels on my house right now, which is great. But I want to be clear to all the listeners and everything that there's no kind of deal here. I'm not getting any discount, or there's no quid pro quo here. The price was all set before we even talked about having you on the show. So I just jumped at the opportunity to have an experienced solar installer on my program, and there's no money changing hands because we're doing this. So, all right. So now that that's out of the way, John, welcome to the show. How long have you been working in the solar industry?
Since 1979.
Wow. I had no idea it was that long. I knew you told me that you started Integrated Solar back in 95, but you've been working on it since 1979. Wow. So what kind of changes and advancements in the solar technology have you seen over that long period of time?
Well, when I first got into it, what we were doing was solar water heating systems, or solar space heating. So at that time, solar electric or photovoltaics was really not anything more than just experiments in a lab. It wasn't for commercial consumption until the mid-'80s when I did sell my first solar electric system. At that time, it was all off-grid systems that people used to power a light or radio in their cabin in the woods, something like that. So I got into that and then started to do a lot of solar water heating systems, residential solar water heating systems. We did a few commercial scale ones for YMCA. For the Marines, they were experimenting into renewable energy around the year 2000.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just want to point out that solar is still being used that way in isolated off-grid applications. I actually have an example in the alley behind my house. There's ironically enough, there's a natural gas distribution little shed back there, and about a few months back they came out and they put a solar panel on it, and the solar panel's being used to power a remote monitoring setup they've got in there. So they actually found that was cheaper than hooking up to the grid, even though the grid was, there's plenty of power in the city of Bowling Green, but so that's still a practical way to look at solar. But grid tie has become the thing, and I think that's. Would you agree with that assessment that mostly systems are now running into the grid tie rather than being isolated?
That's correct. We still have a few people that are using them for hunting cabins or things like that, but most of our customers are commercial or utility customers. Occasionally we'll do some residential around Northwest Ohio, but that's been a small part of it in the last 15 years.
So what's the big? I was just going to ask, what's the biggest system that you've installed?
We installed a 3.7 megawatt or million watt system for American Electric Power. That was in Clyde, Ohio. That's worked.
Great.
Yeah, we've had several 1 megawatt size systems. University of Toledo has done a lot of solar electric systems. The Air National Guard here at the 180th Fighter Wing at Toledo Airport.
Okay.
We've done some systems for IKEA and Costco. They seem to be using it for saving money and doing the right thing environmentally.
What would you say is about the job itself? Is a solar installer, is that a good job?
Well, it's a good job. It's challenging. A lot of the technology has really advanced over the last few years. The cost of the components has come down significantly, and new technology that makes the systems more efficient and less expensive to install have really changed the way we've done it for the last 8 to 10 years. It really is affordable now for homeowners as well as business owners, and we're seeing a lot of it.
Yeah, you kind of actually hit my next question, but I'll go back to the one I want to ask right now, which is, so if there was a young person listening to this show, somebody who's trying to figure out maybe what kind of field they'd go into, would you recommend that solar might be something to look at as a future employment?
I see a lot of interest, particularly from college age students. We've had some Bowling Green State University co-ops, summer work experience on a number of occasions over the last few years. And it's a good, challenging job. Not only do we install, we design systems, installing them on roofs or on large ground racks, solar fields, is always a challenge because you've got to connect those systems to the utility in some fashion. And it's mostly, we call it behind the meter, at their installations on a building, rooftop of schools, where we tie the connection to the utility at their main electric service. And so that service was not made for external connections like that. So we do have to come in and shut the power down to the facility, tap into their main service coming in. And there's a lot of design involved in that, because by putting a large solar system, you can overload electric service very easily if it's not properly designed.
The interconnection, they call that.
The interconnection, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very important.
And the Ohio has a net metering law. You've probably talked about that, and as most other states do, and that gives a homeowner or a facility owner the opportunity to interconnect to the grid. And if you're generating excess power, it will actually flow back into the grid instead of into a battery. So grid-tied solar has really revolutionized the solar electric industry, because it can be connected in many ways, types, sizes, and connecting to many different interconnection points on the grid. So it's been a very challenging and fun job.
So if somebody's listening and they're thinking about getting solar on their house, or maybe putting on the institution where they work, what would you say to people that would sort of push them to actually go ahead and do it? What about it, especially about solar recently, makes it so much more practical now, and it essentially makes this now the time to switch over to solar?
The federal government still has a tax credit for it. It is slowly being reduced over the next 3 years to, I think it's going to be 10% after another 3 years. But you're not going to have the tax credit that you've had in the past for much longer. So it makes it a very economical way to generate electricity. You save transmission and distribution charges. You're reducing your use of electricity from other sources. So it can be installed, and with a payoff or a return on investment in less than 10 years. And these systems are warranted for 25 years. At least the panels are. The inverters now have longer warranties as well and are very dependable. So once you make an investment into a solar system, it just returns year after year, and your electric rates will stay pretty much the same.
If people wanted to, talk to you about it, to get more information on that, how would they do that?
Well, they could send me an email or give me a call. I'll give you an email address and a phone number. But I do recommend that if somebody's thinking about it, to talk to somebody that has installed before, knows the tricks to get it installed correctly. What I usually ask the customer, things about their rooftop, if you're going to put it on your rooftop. Obviously, you want to have a rooftop that gets a lot of sun. In this location, United States, we face the solar system south because that generates the most electricity. That's where the sun is in the southern sky for the whole year, and so you get the most generation for your investment. But you want to look at, make sure that the system is sized to meet your loads in your house. There's different ways that we size a system, but we can discuss those things as the interest of the customer increases. And so that's where you usually want to start. You got to have the right orientation, and you've got to have a point in your electric service where you can connect the system. So that needs to be looked at by somebody that knows how to install the systems.
Okay. And I wanted to add on to a point you were making there that you made a little earlier, is that the panels are warranted for like 25 years now, but it's turning out, back when they were installing these things 30 and 40 years ago, they just made a guess as to how long they would last. But it is actually turning out that a lot of these systems are still functioning at really high levels 30 and 40 years later. So even though everything is based around this 25-year prediction, that the actual performance might well go beyond that, and in fact has gone beyond that in a lot of those older systems that got installed. So and that makes the return on investment and the price per kilowatt hour generated just incredibly inexpensive. So okay, John, thanks so much for talking with us. So you want to go ahead and give us that email and phone number?
Sure. My email address is jwitte@integrated-solar.com. That's jwitte at integrated-solar.com. You can also reach me at 419-467-4400. Feel free to give me a call if you got any questions about whether it would work for you.
All right. Thanks so much, John, for being on For a Green Future.
Thank you, Joe.
So that was John Witte, and with Integrated Solar. And just to be clear, that this isn't an endorsement. This isn't an advertisement. This is just, I wanted to interview somebody from the solar business who's in the solar industry, one of the people that's affected by things like House Bill 6. And John was right there working on my house, so I asked him and he agreed. So we're very grateful that he was on, that he shared this with us. And we're also grateful for our sponsors. And For a Green Future is brought to you by the Wood County Park District. The Wood County Park District is a natural resources conservation agency. They protect natural spaces, maintain quality green spaces, provide engaging programming, and they teach people to love and respect nature. They restore wildlife habitats, and they lead outdoor adventures. The Wood County Parks protects natural spaces in Wood County for all to enjoy, from 8 a.m. to 30 minutes past sunset every day of the year. And there's a couple ways you could reach the Wood County Park District to find out what's going on. One is just give them a call at 419-353-1897. Another is to go to their website, which is www.wcparks.org. And you can also find them on Facebook. Just search on Facebook for Wood County Parks. And finally, they've got a nifty app, and you just go to the App Store. It's free, and you just search for WC Parks, and you download that, and you can see some nice pictures people have taken of things and happenings at the park, and you can keep up to date on what's going on in the parks. So Wood County Park District. And For Green Future is also brought to you by our wonderful patrons. These are people who've gone to patreon.com, that's Patreon, patreon.com, and they've searched for Green Future, and there our show will pop up, and there's all sorts of levels of membership. You just have to pick the one that fits your budget, and then after that, every month the money will be taken out. You won't even notice it, but we'll notice it because we're very grateful, and it's only with the help of our patrons that we're able to keep this show going every week. And we really love doing the show. So don't we, Rebecca? All right, Rebecca, are you on the line?
I am.
All right. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So, yeah, talking about the House Bill 6, we thought it was dead, but what did you think when you heard about this the arrest of the Speaker of the Ohio House on corruption charges on House Bill 6?
I can't say that I find that all surprising. I didn't. The only thing that I really heard about it on the news was that DeWine had said that he was okay with it. He was for repealing House Bill 6.
Yeah, about that.
I was wondering what you think about that at the time.
Yeah, he wants a quote repeal unquote. Finger quotes in the air here. He wants House Bill 6 repealed, but he still wants First Energy to get all the money that's been promised in House Bill 6. Yeah.
All right.
So it's kind of like,
that's
I want. Yeah, go ahead.
It sounds a bit pointless.
Yeah. It's kind of like, we've caught the thief. Now you're caught, but you get to keep everything you stole, but you've been caught.
Yeah.
No, and he is joining Teresa Gavarone and some of the other people who are very deep into this scandal and saying that, but it's basically a good bill.
No, it's not.
No.
There's nothing good about it, just about.
Yeah, literally, it was. In fact, I was going to read a few. A lot of organizations have come out now and said we need a repeal, and the Sierra Club put out a press release on it, and the title of the Sierra Club's press release is "The Nation's Most Regressive Energy Legislation, Now Also Most Corrupt, Should Be Repealed."
Somehow this reminds me of there's this one little girl in my sister's preschool who used to go around bopping other kids on the head. And then when confronted by the authorities about her behavior, she would look at them and say, "Well, I was sorry."
Right. Yeah.
I think I'm hearing, "But we were sorry." Here,
Right. We shouldn't be punished because we were sorry. But
we were planning on being sorry in advance when we did it.
That's right. We had that all blocked off. So in this Sierra Club press release, there's a quote here from Neil Wagner, who said, "The whole process around HB6, from its passage through the legislature to the attempted referendum campaign, was riddled with red flags." And then he says, "It's therefore shocking but not surprising," which is interesting, "that after a campaign around a bill based on lies, greed, and complete disregard of the facts, now involves criminal corruption at the highest levels of Ohio state government." So so that's a pretty good one. And then so they're calling for a complete repeal. And then the let's see, we also have Ohio Citizen Action and their press release calling for a complete repeal. And they specifically say nothing short of a complete repeal is acceptable. So this idea that Theresa Gavarone and Governor DeWine have, that somehow we're going to repeal the bill but still give all the spoils to First Energy, they are not accepting it. And and under that part where they say, where Ohio Citizen Action in their press release says nothing less than a full repeal is acceptable, they point out 1 year ago yesterday, because this happened literally almost exactly a year after the bill passed. The bill passed on July 23rd. 1 year ago, HB6 narrowly passed with one vote in the House, even with all the bribes.
Yeah.
This bill is corrupt from the inside out, and you might want to check out how your legislator voted and if they are up for re-election in the fall. So
it's one really horrifically nasty piece of legislation.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I went over it a little bit at the beginning of the show, but from eliminating the efficiency program, which cost Ohio taxpayers nothing. It was a 0% interest loan that businesses could borrow and then pay back, and then that was a revolving loan fund, and it helped Ohio businesses save billions, literally billions of dollars in energy costs, and they just got rid of that because, well, an electric company like First Energy doesn't actually like the idea of companies saving billions on energy costs. They want them to have big, inefficient, like electricity guzzling manufacturing processes because that makes them more profit. And since they had complete control of the legislature, they just got rid of it. And that's just one of many things. And I'm still, feel free to chime in here, folks, at 866-240-1065. I would really like to get some reactions from people. What do you think of this news that your state legislature was bought off with, and the democratic process was short-circuited with $61 million of corrupt money coming directly from what's identified as Company A, which I identify personally, I believe, and I think everyone believes that the Company A is actually the First Energy Corporation, which is now renamed as renamed as Energy Harbor, but it's those same corrupt people. And what do you think? What did you think when you heard the news? What did you think of this scandal? Is this something that you should care about, or is it just, you don't even care that $60 million got spent disrupting the process? And part of the way that process was disrupted, and a big chunk of that $60 million went to hiring blockers, people who were attacking the people gathering petitions to overturn House Bill 6. And I was one of those people that got attacked, and I had petitioners working for me who got attacked, and it was one of the darkest days for democracy in our nation's history, because we were trying to use the democratic process to reverse something that should not have happened in the first place. And just by spending tens of millions of dollars, First Energy allegedly destroyed our democratic right to be able to vote on the bills that affect our lives and our pocketbooks. And this is one that's going to affect us very directly. There's going to be a charge on our bill, a corruption charge, because that's what most of the money went to, was corruption. So, are you okay with this?
Me, heck no. It's a little more symbolic and maybe sort of less substantive, but I was wondering if you heard that the city of Monroe, in response to our demonstration against the Custer statue, has said that it will modify the presentation of the Custer statue, which I think could be a good thing if they just moved him off that corner, because he kind of creates a blind corner. You can't really see past him to see whether people are coming, for example. From the other direction, from the side.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
Maybe they'll put him in a 2-2. That would be changing the
There we
presentation.
go. It would add some whimsy. I think people would probably come from further to see that than they would just to see a guy on a horse. Everybody's seen a guy on a horse. Come on, they all look alike.
All right. Yeah. All right.
He's got wavier hair, though.
Yeah. Just one more thing on the House Bill 6 thing. The Ohio Green Party also put out a press release calling for the complete and immediate repeal of House Bill 6. And Joseph DeMare, the political director, hey, that's me, had this to say. This is in the press release. Fundamentally, House Bill 6 was one of the worst energy bills ever passed, eliminating funding for wind and solar while adding charges to Ohioans' electric bills for nuclear and coal power is insane in this time of global warming. And the only reason it happened was because of the corrupting influence First Energy has on the Ohio Legislature. Even if it turns out not a single law was broken, this is still pure corruption, and both Republicans and Democrats should be ashamed of their part in passing it. So, yeah, it's important to point out this could not have passed without Democratic Party support. So even though Democrats voted against it, Republicans also voted against it. But this was a bipartisan piece of evil. All right, so we're off of House Bill 6. Yeah. All right, so moving on, it's time for Eco News and Views here. Unfortunately, I don't know if you caught it last week, Rebecca, but last week I had 5 stories of all good news, which was great. So unfortunately, today we're back to normal, which is mostly bad news.
Not so much, huh?
Yeah. Story on July 15th in Mother Jones. Trump has rewritten NEPA, the National Environmental Protection Act. And NEPA, unfortunately, is one of the single best defenses against environmental destruction that exists in law in the United States of America. And Trump basically trashed it. Trump basically just did an executive order and said, I don't want to protect the environment. I don't want to. And on July 15th, he signed the executive order that makes it, essentially, it destroys it because it puts time limits on how long an organization has to appeal something via NEPA. It puts a time limit on how long that appeal can take. So no matter what kind of research needs to be done, no matter what kind of information needs to be gathered, now there's a strict deadline that said, nope, the decision's got to be made by X. And the reason I picked the Mother Jones article particularly to talk about this is that they also mentioned some of the other horrible things Trump has done, like unrestricted climate emissions from oil and gas, coal ash dumping. Now, coal ash is something that's really highly toxic. It's filled with arsenic and lead and other heavy metals. And there have been regulations guarding how and where you could dump it, like you had to make sure it was someplace where it wouldn't leak into the water table. Now Trump has said to the coal companies, dump it wherever you like. Put it in the backyard of a school if you like, and you don't have to bother with all those, plastic liners and all that nasty, all that inconvenient stuff. Just do whatever you want with it, even though it's toxic and will kill people. So, and then also he changed regulations for building new factories. He made sure that they no longer have to be clean. There had been regulations in place that new builds had to follow stricter environmental laws so that they made less pollution, and that's no longer the case. Now, according to Trump, they can put out as much toxic fumes as they want. And to top it all off, the cherry on the top of Trump's attacking of the environment this week is they approved the Pebble Mine in Alaska. And the Pebble Mine is this proposed mine. It's been proposed, and people have been fighting it for 15 years in Alaska because it threatens the Alaska salmon fishery. And we did a show with the director of the Alaskan salmon fishery a number of months ago, and you can go back in our podcast or our YouTube videos and listen to that show. The Alaskan wild salmon fishery is literally one of the most important sources of protein for human beings on the planet. It is the most productive. Yeah, it's the most productive fishery in the world, and it's managed sustainably. We actually had an interview with the fellow who manages it, and they're always very careful not to hurt the salmon fishery. And I know I've got 2 cans of salmon in my cupboard. Most everybody does because it's cheap, it's delicious, it's healthy. And the Army Corps of Engineers has decided that destroying the salmon rivers and destroying the salmon streams for creating this mine and then dumping the wastes and the tailings into other streams and filling in the wetlands that they use to spawn, this won't affect salmon populations.
We'll just go to discos instead, Joe.
Well, just a different sort of breeding ground.
Fish discos. Yeah. We have those, right?
Yeah. Right. Now, everybody else in Alaska, except the mining company, disagrees with this. As I said, this battle's been going on for 15 years, and nobody in Alaska wants this mine except the mining company and the Army Corps of Engineers and President Donald Trump. And so they are. So this was Trump's, and the unrest that's going on in the country, it needs to happen. These protests that are happening are dealing with issues that the country needs to have dealt with for many years, and it's inspiring the way people are coming out, and we also have the COVID crisis, which is intensely important, and we should be paying attention to that. But what's happening is the Trump administration is using these other crises as cover, and then just going ahead and doing all these horrible environmental things, and people don't even know that these things are happening. So that's why we're here, Rebecca, to let people know that what's going on.
I'm just thinking of the news anymore as the "We Are So Far Up the Creek" show, because it's all just kind of COVID, riots, COVID. That's all it is anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it makes it simple for the reporters at those levels, but this other stuff has longer term, can actually do more damage in the long term. I mean, one of the things about NEPA is that it prevented what's called environmental racism, which is that a lot of these polluting industries and pollution, toxic waste dumps and coal ash dumps, by the way, are being dumped on the poorer communities who have historically been racially often minorities and people of color, and NEPA protected those communities. They said, no, you can't single out the poor and the disenfranchised neighborhoods to dump stuff in just because they don't have as much political power. Trump got rid of that. So at the same time, people are in the streets arguing for more racial equity. Trump is literally passing a law saying that we can pollute people who are living in neighborhoods of color, in minority neighborhoods. We can pollute them more. It's okay. And here's some more toxic heavy metals you can dump on them that you weren't able to before. So it's just amazing. So, all right. Well, so Rebecca, I think after all that negativity, I think we have a few minutes for something just a little more interesting and just sort of eco. I understand you've been researching wild rice.
Oh, I have a little bit because I saw this interesting story that there's some guy up in Canada who was trying to bring it back. Because it was like a big native thing, there was a big harvest every fall, got them through the winter and things. And, there's almost none of it around. That was the thing. Like, I wanted to do it because it was a thing about America. Like, literally there are 4 varieties of this stuff, 4 species, and one's in China, 3 are in America. and North America and Canada. And the thing is, I've been here my whole life. I grew up in 4 different states, and nobody's ever pointed out wild rice to me, even though I'm from the kind of family where we like to point out natural stuff, But it's taken a hit because people don't like it in little lakes and ponds and stuff because it messes up their water skiing and their motorboats and stuff.
Yeah,
you can still do a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Wild rice it's incredibly nutritious. It's much better for you than domestic rice. And
it's yummy too.
Seen, it is. It's very tasty. And I've seen videos of how it was harvested. It was incredibly sustainably harvested. You literally, here's what you do. You take a canoe through the wild rice, you bend the stalks over the canoe, and you tap on them with some quote-unquote beater sticks, and the wild rice falls in the bottom of the canoe. And basically you just do that all morning, and you can fill the canoe with rice, and then you just paddle it in, and there you go. There's your canoe full of wild rice. That's it. You don't have to get heavy machinery. You don't have to, terrace the landscape. You just let it grow, and then it'll give you tons and tons of rice.
I guess that it's called Monument in Ojibwe, which is where the Menominee tribe name comes from, and a lot of there's like a Monoman in Wisconsin or something, and a lot of the lakes that you see around that are named Rice Lake are called that because there used to be a lot of rice in them.
Well,
so
I'm glad someone's trying to bring them back.
Yeah, well, his neighbors are all mad because they can't. But you can still do a lot of stuff. You can canoe and kayak just fine in a lake with wild rice in it.
Mm-hmm. And fish. You can fish. So.
Yeah, you can do water stuff. You can still do water stuff.
Yeah. So if somebody listening has a pond or something, maybe they would consider planting some wild rice there. It helps the environment, and it's cool stuff.
Yep. Yeah. I guess there's a variety that grows in the Great Lakes area in Canada, and then there's another one that grows along the East Coast and in Florida, and then there's one that is the Texas wild rice only grows around a very small area of the San Marcos River, because besides pollution and environment destruction, it also its pollen can't go very far for some reason. So things just don't get pollinated if they're too far away from the other plants, so that's why it's endangered. And they're not actually, they're very distant cousins of regular rice. There's Manchurian wild rice, which grows in China, but they're I don't know, in the same family, but not in the same genus or something, but the 3 wild rice species are sister species. All
right, well, good luck to that fella in Canada who's trying to bring it back.
Yeah.
Right. Well, Rebecca, as you briefly touched on, it is time for the letter from the future.
Yay! Finally.
I'm hearing music. Uh-oh. Well, here goes real fast. Dear GGG, I'm just about to finish my hike from Bowling Green to Cincinnati over the Slippery Elm Trail. I'm sitting in my camp just north of the city. In your time, I would have known I was getting close to a city by the sound of traffic and the smell of pollution. The first sign that I had that I was getting close to a city was the sound of an outdoor concert. Some of the classics from your time are still played today. Sweet Caroline and Brick House are 2 examples. But modern music would look and sound very strange to you. I say look because here in the future, artists integrate holographic technology and sound in ways that would probably blow your mind. And unfortunately, that's all the time we have. I'll finish the letter next week. All right, Rebecca.
There you go.
This is Joe DeMare.
And Rebecca Wood.
And we're signing off. Thanks for listening, folks.
Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun